Hey guys, as you guys probably know, I have a tendency to do things one take. I don't do too many jump cuts. I don't do any kind of major editing on any of my stuff. So the first couple of minutes of this interview is going to be pretty damn cringeworthy. I was super nervous. I don't know why. It was John motherfucking Payne. This dude's a badass in the community, and he's been doing so much great work here in Missouri. I could see where I got a little bit of butterflies, and I wasn't really on top of my game like I seemed to be when I was interacting with Norman Horn and Kawako Adusi and Narigamba Minsubo. So, yeah, it's going to be a little bit cringeworthy, but this is the first video interview I've had in a while. John really does take over, which is fantastic. So, everybody enjoy. Hey everybody, this is Adam Broad of Liberationis Reipublicae coming to you from the Voluntary Virtues Network here in the house of John Payne. John Payne is the Executive Director and Treasurer of Show Me Cannabis Institute. We call it Institute? Yes, no?
Just Show Me Cannabis.
Show Me Cannabis? Alright. A little bit of background on John. He received his bachelor's in history from Washington University in St. Louis in 2005. John spent the next 4 years teaching high school in both rural Missouri and St. Louis before leaving to pursue a career combining his passion for public policy and writing. Mr. Payne worked as a research assistant for the Show Me Institute in St. Louis, Missouri from 2010 to the summer of 2011 when he joined the Show Me Cannabis Group and the Regulation Board of Directors in November of 2011. And he also served as the Eastern Missouri campaign manager during the 2012 campaign. In addition to his duties at Show Me Cannabis Regulation, John serves on the board of directors of Alumni for Liberty. His writing has appeared in the Journal of Libertarian Studies, Young American Revolution, The American Conservative, and Reason, as well as newspapers across the state of Missouri. Welcome to Liberationis Reipublicae. Glad to have you on board, John.
Thank you, Adam. Good to be here.
All right, well, good to be home, right?
Well, good to be home and, on the show. So.
Perfect. And, well, all right, for the sake of my audience, I gotta ask the three standard questions. You know these coming up. What's your political history? Who influenced you as a libertarian? Why is libertarianism so important? Fire away.
Well, I've identified as a libertarian pretty much as long as I've been, aware of my political identification. As long as I've really been politically aware, going back into high school and maybe even a little bit into junior high. And I didn't really have any particularly influential figures at that point. But then when I went to Wash U in 2001, I met the college libertarians there, and they turned me on to Murray Rothbard. And so I read For New Liberty when I was 18, and that made me a Rothbardian libertarian. And then I actually worked for the Mises Institute for a while and did a lot of studying on some more left libertarians. I became good friends with Roderick Long. And was influenced by him, as well as also Karl Hess, who I never got to meet Karl Hess, but he was a very influential figure in my own political development.
Awesome. And so why is libertarianism so important to you, or anarchism, or pick any 6,000 variations of the term of anti-state?
I would say that libertarianism, and I also embrace the term anarchism, or just a totally free market. I think it's so important because it's really about respect for other human beings, and I don't think any other political philosophy really gets at that notion that people have rights, that we shouldn't treat people as objects or as means to an end, but as ends in themselves. And so only a political philosophy that says that people have a right to do anything they want to do as long as they're not harming someone else, only that philosophy truly respects humans as ends in themselves.
All right, so drug policy has been a big thing, especially in the leftist and libertarian circles. What really made it be the big thing for you to get into? Why is it so important?
I would say that the drug policy issue was actually the primary issue for me all along. Back when I was in high school, I read a book called Drug Crazy by Mike Gray. And it showed me that it wasn't just, I always agreed with the libertarian idea that people have a right to put into their bodies whatever they want, but that also showed me that the drug war was being used as a way of fundamentally denying people rights. It was creating a lot of crime, and moreover, it wasn't even working. So it was always the most important issue for me, and I was really involved with Students for a Sensible Drug Policy while I was in college as well. However, after I got out of college, I didn't really see that as a viable career, so I didn't really pursue anything professionally with it until a few years ago. And it was basically, I wanted to work on it the whole time, but it wasn't until they offered me an actual job that I was able to make it my career.
Very good. So that kind of brings us to the time of your life where you're part of Show Me Cannabis. What made you want to really join up with them as opposed to other, drug advocacy groups or groups like that? And what's the basic history on Show Me Cannabis?
Sure. Show Me Cannabis was founded about 3 years ago, over the summer of 2011, and it was it was the first time that there was really a group of people that was trying to make this a full-time endeavor, that they were really going to try to run a campaign to legalize cannabis in the state of Missouri. Missouri NORML has been around for decades, but it's always been a purely volunteer organization. And that's great, but if you want to really achieve a change, you have to have staff people. And so, Show Me Cannabis, we were fortunate enough to have some people that had the money to hire people to actually work on this issue full time. And so, ultimately, that's really why I was able to join. I mean, it wasn't a question of whether I wanted to. If NORML had the ability to pay me years ago, I would have been happy to work for them as well, or on a national level, the Marijuana Policy Project or Drug Policy Alliance. But it was just the fact that they were able to hire me, and I was able to make a living doing it, because I would love to work on it for free, but if you spend 60 hours a week doing something, you pretty much have to be able to get paid to put food on the table. So for me, the issue was really being able to make a living at doing it. And so after Show Me Cannabis was founded, our first task, we tried to get a legalization initiative on the ballot in 2012, and that didn't actually end up working out. Obviously, it's still illegal in the state of Missouri, but we got about 70,000 signatures with very little money, and it really created a statewide organization, that big volunteer network, and a group of people that would form the core of what we would do afterwards. And so we've continued to build on that and add on more people that have contributed money, that have volunteered their time. And so now we're an organization that is able to, have a steady full-time executive director and myself, also a number of freelancers. We just brought back on our research arm just brought on another full-time employee, Amber Langston, over in Kansas City. And so we intend to keep growing, and ultimately to put a legalization and regulation measure on the ballot in 2016, and I believe we'll be able to pass it then.
Absolutely, and I do look forward to that. So one of the major tasks that I've seen, at least it's all over Facebook, and it's all over the Show Me Cannabis website, is this Free Jeff Mazinski campaign. What's that all about? What's the background of the story? I know that he's been in prison for 20-ish plus years from what I understand, his third drug issue, life without parole. What the hell?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Jeff Mazinski is serving life without parole for a nonviolent cannabis offense. You are correct, though, that it was his third offense. The other two both also nonviolent cannabis offenses. And the reason that he received life without parole is because he was tried under what is called the prior and persistent drug offender statute. And so any time that, third offense, it's like a three strikes law. Whatever the sentence is, it is going to be carried out without the possibility of parole or probation. And so he was sent to prison with a life sentence, and in fact he wasn't even really aware that it was a life without parole sentence until several years down the road, when they said, oh, since it was a prior and persistent case, you have no possibility for parole. And so he's been in there for about 20 years, and the specific charge was that he was at a hotel he drove a person to a hotel who was unquestionably buying about 4 pounds of cannabis to then sell. And Jeff was probably the, maybe a lower level distributor under that individual. Everyone agrees that he was the lowest person in that hotel room. Yet he was sentenced most harshly out of everyone there. The guy who was actually buying the marijuana that Jeff was carrying at the time, he was only sentenced to 10 years. And he was released, and he's dead now, but he died, a free man, or at least relatively free man. Whereas Jeff Mazansky, if nothing changes, if the government doesn't grant him clemency, or if our initiative, if we don't pass an initiative that allows him to be released and his records expunged, then he will die in prison. And he has children and now grandchildren that have basically grown up without seeing him. And I think it's terribly unjust for somebody that has committed no violence, committed no crime against another human being. Only crime was just possessing a plant, that we're going to lock that person up for the rest of their life.
Yeah, there's several videos, at least 2 that I've seen on YouTube and other places in the interwebs, where we're getting comments about Jeff that there's some people saying that he should be locked up for life, or that he should even be shot and killed on the street for his non-violent drug offense. What do you say to these people?
Well, I don't think there's any reaching those people, unfortunately. And that's, I certainly don't think they're anything close to a majority in this country. Most people, when they hear that case, they are sympathetic. They think that's obviously far too harsh. But if someone thinks that a person should be shot or be in prison for the rest of their life for a non-violent offense, well, I just don't know if there's any convincing them. I think they're fundamentally, basically, they're a fascist. I don't really know what else to say about it. But I would make the argument to them that at the very least, this is your tax dollars. This is money that is coming from you. You should at least want it to be spent in ways that are most effective. And if our criminal justice system exists to fight crime and to keep people from violence and property crimes, this is a very ineffective method of going about that. You should want the people to be locked up that are rapists, robbers, murderers, that sort of thing. And when we're going after non-violent offenders, that's time that we are not able to go after those more serious offenses that everyone agrees pose threats to society. So I think that we should all be able to agree that those should be prioritized over non-violent offenses.
But marijuana, it's the gateway drug to the hard stuff, which always, in every case, ends in somebody getting murdered. Please. So, with the help that Show Me Cannabis is putting behind Jeff Mazansky, what can my viewers do to really help this out? I know they can go and text Jeff to 420-420. I know, very appropriate, perfect.
Yeah.
What things can they do? Where can they donate? How can we help them out?
Well, we have a website set up that has Jeff's story on it. That's justice for the number 4 Jeff JEFF.com. And if they go there, it has Jeff's story and has a place where they can contribute to our campaign to spread the word about him and also get legal assistance for him. And then also people can they can call the governor's office. I do not have the number on me right now. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
We'll pop that in the description bar.
That would be great. But yeah, the governor's constituent services line, if they call that and also send the governor a message through their online form or in a letter saying that they want the governor to grant clemency to Jeff Mazansky, that is something that can make a difference. We know that the governor's office has certainly heard about it a lot, but we want to keep that drumbeat going because we want to make sure that they understand this is not an issue that's going to go away.
Right. And now we're going to kind of move into the my audience question topic time. I've got a question from good friend Rick Vandy when he was a libertarian candidate. I know you're aware of him. He commented and asked, do you believe that cannabis is close to being removed from the Schedule 1 list? And what would that mean?
At the federal level, I do think we are getting close to that. And what that would mean is that under Schedule 1, drugs are considered to be, those are drugs that are considered to be both highly addictive, have a high possibility for abuse, and that they have no medical value. And now we have 23 states with sort of broad medical marijuana laws, and we have, I can't remember exactly how many, but Missouri just joined their ranks yesterday, of states that have fairly limited medical cannabis laws that are just for CBD oil that applies only to patients with seizures. But nonetheless, there's now a majority of the states that have some kind of medical cannabis law. So, we've reached a point where the majority of Americans live in places where there is some kind of medical cannabis that is legal under state law. So I don't think federal law can continue to contradict that rising tide. And we've actually, we had a vote in the House of Representatives back in, I believe, June, where they voted to defund the medical cannabis raids by the DEA, and that vote, it had failed every time that amendment had been offered for the last decade. This time it had passed with about 80 Republican votes and almost all the Democrats. So this is now a majority opinion in the House of Representatives that the DEA should not be going after medical cannabis in states where it's legal. We saw gotten a vote on that in the Senate, but I think that's going to change. My personal opinion, and it's hard to predict these things, but what I think will happen is the 2014 elections will pass, and then they will tackle trying to change the scheduling of cannabis. Because right now, basically what's going on is Congress is saying, oh, that would be the president's responsibility, and the president's saying, oh, it should be Congress's responsibility, and I think they just want to avoid it during an election year. After that, though, President Obama has nothing to lose. He has no, he can do whatever he wants, basically. He's a lame duck, so I think he'll actually move to tackle that issue.
Right, you mentioned Governor Nixon signed the cannabis CBD oil bill. Could you go into a little bit of detail as to what that entails, what kind of freedoms that kind of loosens up? I know it's kind of laughable to say that a state-imposed law is good for freedom, but, make the case.
Sure, and it's it is a limited bill. I'm not here to say that this is going to solve all our problems on this issue, not nearly, but it's a good start, and it will provide a tremendous amount of help for at least some patients. So the bill will allow for the production and distribution and use of oil derived from cannabis that contains cannabidiol or CBD, and this has a number of different uses, but under this bill it will only be allowed to be used for intractable epilepsy. It's epilepsy that has not responded to other treatments. And I know a number of families across the state who have children or adults who are suffering from these disorders that could benefit from this, and these are people that are having dozens, maybe even hundreds of seizures a day that is just fundamentally disrupting their ability to have anything close to a normal life. And so if they get the access to this medicine and it can give them back a normal life and let them function, then I think that's tremendous. It also, though, I think can pave the way for broader reform because it's making people reconsider what they thought they knew about the cannabis plant. This got voted, it was every single senator in the Missouri State Senate voted for this bill. 150 out of nearly 170 representatives voted for the bill. So you're talking about something that was approved by almost every legislator in the state. And this is, they now have approved some kind of medical cannabis. So they can no longer maintain that this is something that doesn't have medical value. And so I think it's easy to go, well, you see how it's treating people with epilepsy. Well, maybe it could also be useful for people that are undergoing chemotherapy, or people that are suffering neuropathic pain from muscular dystrophy or fibromyalgia. And so there's a long list of things that once they've acknowledged the principle that it can be used medically, that they can see that it has a potential to treat a number of other illnesses.
So we've got the extremes. We've got people who say there's no value in it at all. It's almost as bad as cigarettes and alcohol. But then there's people on the far other side of the spectrum that say, oh my God, it's the cure-all. It's the snake oil that will make all your ailments go away. What's the truth? Where does it fall?
I mean, I think it is pretty tremendous. It has a lot of different applications, but there are definitely people on my side who are a bit too enthusiastic about it. I think a lot of people make the claim, for instance, that cannabis cures cancer, and there is some actual evidence out there showing that there are compounds within cannabis that will fight some cancers. However, to say it cures cancer, I think is at the very least premature. We need to do a lot more research on this, and I hope that we can develop cancer-fighting drugs from that. But most likely is we'll be able to derive treatments, not cures. A cure is something that you take it and you're cured for the rest of your life. You do not have to worry about cancer ever again. It's more likely it's going to be something that, okay, this is something that can help fight a tumor, probably when combined with other therapies, but it's certainly something that has not been researched nearly enough, largely because of the federal government's politicization of the issue. The fact that it's been Schedule 1 and they've said that it has no medical value has restricted people's ability to research it because they say, well, it has no medical value. We're not going to do any research on it. And so I think once we start to open up the research, we're going to find that it is very useful for treating a lot of things, and that there is a lot of potential in this plant that we've ignored.
So obviously the medical implementations of cannabis is fantastic. So when we eventually legalize, or at the very least decriminalize, statewide, nationally, whatever, what other things do you see that could come of it? Will we have more in the production field? Will we have more in? I mean, what's the possibilities here?
Oh, I think the possibilities are, I wouldn't say endless, but there are many. For one thing, it's obviously, I think it'll provide a huge economic boost to the state. Out in Colorado, they're looking at something like $1 billion market this year and probably growing. And in the state of Missouri, we have a little bit more population than Colorado, although it is our use levels are a little bit lower. I think we're still looking at something like $1 billion market in cannabis, and that's a market that it does exist right now, but it's basically underground. This is something that could develop into a larger market, and not just for medical purposes, not just for recreational purposes, but you're also talking about hemp, which the state used to lead in the production of for many years up until it was banned at a federal level, and that's a half billion dollar market domestically here in the United States already. But our farmers can't grow hemp, so we're importing it from places like China and Canada. So it would be nice to let our farmers compete in that market and get access to it. And chances are Missouri would be a very good producer of that product. So, we're talking about something that could be $1.5 billion pretty much right off the bat.
So kind of in a roundabout way, we hear all these things in Missouri about we need more farm subsidies because without the farmers, life would be hell. Well, by legalizing this, we would actually kind of have a non-tax funded subsidy. So, I think that'd be great. But what do I know? I just happen to know a little bit about economics. So a couple of questions from a listener blogger over at Indian Libertarians, who goes by Libertarian Kid, which if you haven't had a chance to read him, I will send you some links. He is fantastic. Right. What's the essential difference between libertarian and leftist arguments for drug legalization? Is there any difference?
There can be. I mean, I would say that the fundamental libertarian argument for drug legalization is that we own our bodies and that we should be allowed to put into our bodies what we want. Or maybe a more moderate libertarian might say, and I use this argument pretty frequently because I think it appeals to people even if they aren't libertarians, but that the default should be that the government should not make a law unless they have compelling evidence that shows that this is going to increase public safety, something like that. And in this case, there just obviously isn't. In fact, the evidence all seems to suggest that prohibition is causing more chaos, causing drugs to be more harmful, increasing all these sorts of problems. Now, a leftist might embrace those arguments as well, but I think also they might look at it and look at the disparate racial impact, and libertarians can embrace that argument too. But I think you're more likely to see a leftist talking about this has a disproportionate impact in the way that it's enforced because blacks are arrested at about 2.5 times the level of whites in the state of Missouri. It's 18 times the level of whites in the city of St. Louis, incidentally. But that's a more, leftists tend to look a little bit more at the structural inequalities in the system, whereas libertarians will be more of just thinking about, well, this is, what's the impact on individuals? And so I think that might be somewhat of a difference between the way they look at it. But I don't think there's anything incompatible about the two arguments that you might have from a libertarian and a leftist.
Now, another question from a Libertarian Kid. He asked, would drug legalization cause more drug addicts and more drug-related crime like conservatives warn?
No, I do not believe so. And an interesting case here is Portugal, which now they haven't legalized drugs, but they've decriminalized all drugs. So personal possession is not something that you go to jail for in Portugal now. And what they found is that addiction rates, abuse rates, and other harms that are associated with drug abuse, such as spread of HIV through dirty needles, this sort of thing, those have all dropped dramatically since they have implemented this policy of decriminalization. While at the same time, there has been a slight uptick in, there are a few more people that will try some of these drugs, but very few of them go on to become regular users. So, you have a small uptick in sort of casual use, but a dramatic decline in addiction and actual abuse, which I think are the things that we're really concerned about.
Right, and the thing that always strikes me is when we talk about legalization or decriminalization of anything, people are like, oh, that's going to cause more crime. Well, by definition, by decriminalizing anything that involves that drug, that kind of eliminates at least, 150 different possible crimes that could happen as a result of using said drug. So another question from Libertarian Kid, he asked, was the war on drugs a recent phenomenon, or was this based on an age-old attempt by the state to suppress the unbridled feelings that are typically brought on by, these narcotics and these opiates?
There's probably a little bit of truth to that, but I think it also, identity politics probably plays a bigger role there. If you go back to when cannabis was first prohibited, they started calling it marijuana specifically to associate it with Mexican immigrants and also black jazz singers, groups of people that were not well liked by the white power establishment in the early 1900s, 1920s, 1930s. And so it was about going after a specific group of people without saying directly that you're going to go after those people. And then if you go into the 50s and 60s, it's the beatniks and the hippies that are using cannabis and other drugs. And so those are criminalized because of their association with, again, people that are part of the counterculture, part of people that are challenging the existing power structure. So I think there is truth to what he's saying, but I think it's also a lot more not just about the effects that those drugs have, but the types of people that were using those drugs.
So basically it's just a control mechanism. Again, like 100% of the state. Let's be honest. So next follow-up for you. You probably hate getting asked this question. You get asked 3,500 times. Colorado, what's your take? Good, bad, hellhole, worth it?
I think it's definitely worth it, and I think it's going quite well. So we do, we've seen a lot of the prices are starting to come down there. I know a lot of libertarians are concerned about the level of taxation being too high, and that is something I think we want to keep an eye on, because I don't want to create a system where we tax it so highly that it's then goes right back into a black or gray market. But it looks like the main problem when they had the spike in prices at the beginning was that they just had too few dispensaries licensed. But as time's going on, more and more dispensaries are becoming licensed, more places are allowed to sell legally, and so that's having an effect on the prices and driving them down. And I think will alleviate those problems about the taxes.
Now, obviously, from a libertarian anarchist perspective, hopefully years down the line, we would probably like to see licensing becoming not a requirement. Has that ever crossed your mind? Is that something that's kind of in the super far future plans, or do you not think that you'll live long enough to see that day?
I doubt I'll live long to see that day. In general, I share all the libertarian concerns about licensing, and I think if we were to go after licensing in general and make that argument to the public and convince them that it's not necessary, that it can be handled just through common tort law or something like that, I would be supportive of that sort of effort. But basically the way we're looking at it is that we're not going to be able to both convince the public that it's a good idea to legalize cannabis, and that the way they've been licensing and regulating everything else is also flawed, so we should do it some fundamentally different way. I happen to think that both of those things are true, but you got to kind of pick your battle. So at this time we're pursuing cannabis should be legalized and let's treat it like other things, and then maybe later on we can have this other argument about, well, licensing isn't helpful or necessary, not just with cannabis, but anything. The government doesn't do this job well either. Let's look at ways we can get rid of that and replace it.
Now, being that the circles that I run in now online and the network I'm a part of, most if not all of them are super hardcore anarchists. So the objection they're going to raise to you going through the state is, well, the state's immoral. You're trying to push something that is at least moral in one sense through the state, which is another immoral action. Rothbard, he basically stated that anything we can use to scale back the state, if we use one law to repeal 20 or whatever, pushing the cause of liberty, as long as we're starting to whittle away at the state and go for that ultimate goal, it's all fair game. But then there's still people who are not wanting to get involved in the political process, which, again, I understand. But what would you say to these kind of objections?
I mean, I would say that I'm definitely with Rothbard on this one. Rothbard, he was involved politically all through his life, and they had meetings where they were, in political parties like the Peace and Union or the Peace and Liberty Party back in the late 1960s with a bunch of leftists, and they would go there and offer compromises on the platform that if they would agree to accept a gold standard plank, that they would support that the libertarians would support rent control in the platform, and so it's these funny compromises they would make, and I think that's what we're looking at here, because this is undoubtedly something that's going to increase tax revenue, and I'm not a huge fan of tax revenue. I'm not a fan of taxes in general, but I think the main thing we need to focus on is those areas where the state is really depriving people of their life and liberty. And the fact that someone can be put into a cage for possession of a plant, to me, that's the most important thing. I mean, a tax is bad, but it's, going back to Rothbard's three things, it was in For New Liberty, he said, war is murder, taxation is theft, and conscription is slavery. Well, the drug war is quite literally a war in many cases, and it is murder, and people are being kidnapped and put in cages. So I think those things are worse than theft. So, if we have to accept a slightly increased amount of theft to get rid of a lot of imprisonment and murder, I'll take it.
Absolutely. Now, I kind of just open it up to you. Do you want to promote any particular event, campaign, issue, or anything that's kind of been in your craw for the last little bit, not keeping in mind that this will be airing on July 30th, so a couple of weeks away, so if there's anything in between, that might not get released right away.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and plug. We have a town hall meeting in Hannibal on August 4th, and that's at the Hannibal Public Library. And then we'll be in Maryville on August the 12th. The event, I can't remember exactly where that is happening off the top of my head, but you can go to our website, showmecannabis.com, and check that out, or on Facebook. And also I would add that people should text SMC or Jeff, that'll also work, to 420 to get mobile updates sent to their phone, and visit our website and sign up for our email newsletter.
Very good. Now, what's the best way they can support you? Should they just donate through the website, or continue to support that, share stuff? What would you call people all around the world to do to help Show Me Cannabis and other cannabis-oriented sites?
Definitely, donating is always appreciated. We don't exist without contributions from people that are supportive of the cause, and it does cost a lot of money to try to change these laws, so that's certainly important. But I understand that not everybody can afford to do that, or everyone has different causes that they're supportive of at different levels. So if you can just share information about the cause and just talk to people about the issue, because that's I think for too long there's been a taboo surrounding this issue that has allowed myths to be perpetuated. And if we get out there and start talking about the truth, that will start bringing these walls down.
Right, absolutely. Now, are there any well-to-do or good cannabis programs out there that you would suggest? Maybe some in different states that are Missouri-based, or national campaigns that are worthwhile checking out?
Yeah, I would say so. Out in Oregon, some of the people that we've worked with from the beginning of this, there are several people that are from Missouri but moved out to Oregon and have helped organize New Approach Oregon, which is a legalization campaign out there, and that'll be they submitted their signatures to get on the ballot a few weeks ago, and it hasn't been official yet, but they will almost certainly be on the ballot in November. So I definitely encourage people to check them out and make a contribution to them, and support legalization in Oregon, because that's the more states that start falling, it's I think it's going to pick up steam.
Fantastic. Now, you mentioned in your little bio that you've appeared in the Journal for Libertarian Studies, Young American Revolution, the American Conservative, and Reason, and several other papers and publications. Is there any place, kind of a one-stop shop for people for your writings, speeches, debates, anything like that, if people want to follow you?
There used to be. I used to update a blog all the time, but I haven't really gotten around to it anymore. But it's that is something I should probably get done in the near future. But I don't really update my blog anymore, so there is not, unfortunately.
Darn. Because I know a lot of people are going to want to throw some support behind you, and hey, maybe if they poke and prod you enough, something might happen. Who knows?
I'll
donate some money to them.
I will. This will be on my personal end, but I'll get an updated website for my personal writings and get everything collected into one spot.
Because I was able to track down one of your articles in the Journal of Libertarian Studies. I don't remember what it is. I have slept and not slept since I read it, but holy cow!
Yeah,
totally
Rothbard's Time on the Left, I believe. That would be. Is about Murray Rothbard's alliance with the New Left back in the 1960s.
And I will include that in the description bar below. It's just utterly fantastic. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to have my viewers go and accomplish, donate to, or really just anything out there?
I think we pretty well covered it. So.
All right, fantastic. Well, John, thanks for your time. Again, this is John Payne of Show Me Cannabis. He's the executive director and treasurer. Check him out at showmecannabis.com. We will put everything else in the description bar below. If you guys have any more questions or anything that you want to have us kind of run through, in a potential next interview, again, use the hashtag SMCPayne on Facebook or Twitter, and we will get those questions answered. Worst case scenario, I'll shoot an email out to them, and we'll do text updates from there. So this will be Adam Brott signing off of Liberationis Reipublicae, saying peace and love and liberty.
Thanks.